Now in this talk, what we want to be considering is the Apgar score. And the Apgar score is an acronym which was invented in 1953 by the American anesthesiologist called Virginia Apgar. And the Apgar score is going to be used to assess the newborn's baby, and that is going to be done immediately after birth and at 5 minutes. But if the baby's Apgar score is not doing okay, then it can be repeated at 10 minutes after birth. What do the letters Apgar stand for? Well, in this talk, we want to consider this. So the Apgar score stands for, A stands for appearance, P stands for pulse, that is heart rate. G stands for Glinis. A stands for activity or muscle tone. And R stands for respiration or respiratory effort. Now, what we do in this case is that babies are assessed under the score of 1 to 10. So we have got 5 parameters, and each one of these is supposed to score 2 for us to have the normal baby that is going to be doing well under this Apgar score. So what happens in appearance? So we look at the baby, and the baby is supposed to be at least with a pink all over the body. That is the color of the baby. But if the baby is blue or cyanosed all over the body, that is going to be a 0 score. So we let this baby as 0. But if the baby tends to be pink on the body, but blue on the extremities, that is what we call acrylocynosis. And the baby is not supposed to be like that, but most babies, interestingly, fall into that category. And that's the reason why it is very, very difficult for baby to have an Apgar score of 10 out of 10. So if the baby's extremities are blue and the body is pink, then we rate that as 1. But if the baby's body is pink all over, then we rate that as 2. Now, pulse is heart rate. If the heart rate is absent, then we are going to let this baby as 0. Now, we want the baby's heart rate to be more than 100 beats per minute. But in this case, where the heart rate is present, but it is less than 100, then we give this baby a 1 score. Now, if the heart rate is more than 100 beats per minute, then that simply means that the baby is doing okay, and we rate that as 2. What about Glinis? Well, response to stimulation, if absent, then we are going to let this baby as 0. But if there is no, if the Glinis is present, but the movements are absent upon the irritation of the lower limbs or anywhere else, or upon suctioning or removal of the secretions from the nose or mouth, then the baby is supposed to respond by making that glimpse on all over their face and also to move their legs. But if only the glimpse is present and no movements, then we let this child as 1. Now, if the glimpse is present and the movements are present upon stimulation, we are going to let this baby as 2. Activity refers to muscle tone. If there is no activity or no any movement, then the baby is going to have 0. Because everything is going to be flaccid. There is not going to be any movement. But if the limbs are flexed and the extremities are flexed, but there is no active movement, then we are going to let this child as 1. Now, what about when the baby's limbs are flexed and there is active movement? Then we are going to let that baby as 2. Respiratory effort. Infants are not chest breathers, but they breathe on the abdominal cavity there. So what we do is we assess the baby on the abdominal cavity. We notice their respiratory movements. If they are absent, then we are going to give 0. Now, what if the baby is crying? If the baby is crying, but the crying is not strong, it's irregular, then we are going to give this baby 1 score. Now, if there is vigorous crying in movements, then that simply means that the baby is breathing okay. We are going to give this child 2 score. Now, all of these, the sum of all of these, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, add up to what we call the Apgar score, the total Apgar score, and that is 10 out of 10. Point to take note is that it is very, very difficult for most babies to score an Apgar score of 10 out of 10, primarily because of the acrylocynosis which most infants are born with, or 4 in 2. Very, very important to take note. And we also need to remember that an Apgar score is not going to predict death or morbidity in infants, but it's going to give us a clue of what immediate interventions that we are supposed to take as midwives or any other healthcare professionals working in our clinical areas when the Apgar score is less than 7. Primarily, the Apgar score, which is 0 up to 3, requires immediate interventions and resuscitations because the baby will be at serious risk of developing asphyxia. In the next talk, we are going to start consideration of newborn assessments.